is. The section we're starting is about human reproduction in general. When I'm going through this, if you already know it all, I salute your high school or your parents or whoever taught it to you. But if I seem like I'm being condescending in this section and teaching you things you already know, it's because it's very uneven in the U.S. how well high schools teach this stuff. I'm not going to be talking about STDs because I feel like that's one thing that high schools do teach, or maybe it's middle schools now. I don't think you need to know more about that. But I think they're, from past classes and what students know, I think there is a lot to know about reproductive anatomy and about how conception works and about how contraception works. And then I think the last couple of days are, just one day, pregnancy and birth. So this is a short little unit. It's not a difficult unit. I hope you already know it, but I sure didn't when I was your age, so that's where I'm coming from. Your slides in this section, they don't have a lot of words on them because it's anatomy. So number one, is this a man or a woman? This is a female pelvis. What tips you off that it is? Ovaries. Ovaries help. If you were to look at the 3D shape of the pelvis, the female one is wider and broader as well. But I want to point out several things about this. And most of them are going to be on your lab guide for structures to know, but this one is actually not. This one is a joint. It's a joint. So, yeah, you have these pelvic bones, which you learned in A&P1. Did you learn this in A&P1?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, there it is again, pubic symphysis. And it's a joint composed basically of a cartilage pad in between those two bones. And that relaxes during pregnancy somewhat, which that will become important later. What's this structure? And you wouldn't have to know this yet, but you will after today. This is uterus. So we're looking top down. And the reason that I know that's the uterus is that it's connected. There's a connecting tube heading toward the ovary over here. So that's the uterus. And notice that the uterus is kind of suspended in this cavity by ligaments and cartilaginous tissue. So it doesn't just float around in there. It's linked to the pubic bones through these ligaments. Next structures, maybe I'll just label one side, but they go with both sides. So here, what is that? Yeah, this can be called fallopian tube. Or uterine tube. I would like you to know both names because different people would use either name. So that's connecting the uterus up toward the ovary. This is the ovary. And most women, I say you if you're a woman, most women have 2 ovaries, 2 fallopian tubes. The other thing I want to notice about this is that the fallopian tube is open at the end. See how it's not touching the ovary? That was a thing that I didn't know for an embarrassingly long time. There's a gap between there. And we'll talk about next why the gap is important. So in this picture, those are the major structures that we can see from this view of the female reproductive system. And these structures, ovary, fallopian tube, uterus, those are actually the most important from a reproductive standpoint. What are ovaries for? Why do you need them? Do you need them?
For the eggs.
Yeah. So ovaries house the developing eggs. That's one of their major functions. And the second is that they release hormones. What do you call it when your ovaries are removed?
It's not hysterectomy.
It's not. I actually don't know the word for just ovaries. Hysterectomy is removing the uterus, usually the ovaries along with it. Hysterectomy. Okay, now we come to a cross-section of the ovary. So this picture, you should label cross-section of the ovary. So in the pink, that's the ovary. This thing is a suspensory ligament that is holding the ovary generally next to the pelvis. This is the entrance to the fallopian tube. And so in this picture, they're showing the fallopian tube as almost touching the ovary, but the tube is not entering it. This is still somewhat empty space in between here. Some other terms to know from this is that your ovaries contain lots of eggs at different stages of maturation. So what this is showing is not all the eggs that are in this ovary. There would be on the range of tens of thousands at a very early stage of development. And during the female cycle, what's supposed to happen is that from one ovary or the other, every month, one egg is supposed to start maturing, start growing and enlarging, and eventually be released from the ovary. It's supposed to be just one every month from one side or the other. These are primary follicles. So the little spaces that hold eggs are called follicles. Every month, one of them will kind of be chosen. I don't want to say at random, but scientists are still working out how do you know which one is going to be chosen to start developing further into secondary follicles. So this is the egg this month that has been chosen. It's developing more. It will form this large liquid-filled secondary follicle, and then eventually that follicle will rupture to release the egg. It literally bursts open. That follicle ruptures, the egg is released on the outside, and that process is called ovulation. You may have heard of that, ovulation. And then the egg enters the space, and then it's supposed to enter the fallopian tube if everything goes right. From that point, the follicle that the egg came out of will start degenerating. This is a degenerating follicle, but it's also releasing hormones. It's releasing certain hormones from that point. And then the next month, another egg from a primary follicle will be chosen. It might be out of the other ovary on the other side. But generally every month, that's one egg, starts developing, forms larger and larger follicle. The follicle ruptures, the egg is released. You're in those steps. I'm going to turn the lights all the way off for this picture. So this is a picture, really, truly, of ovulation. Where's the egg in the picture? This is it. This is it. So what's this then? Yeah, the follicle in the ovary. So this would be kind of the edge of the follicle. This is the body of the ovary. The egg is literally busting out of there. This is somewhat of a little bit violent event, and some women can feel it when it happens. So if you've ever felt, if you're a woman, and if you've ever felt like a kind of a sharp pain, like just one time, around the time that you ovulate, which is mid-cycle, you might be feeling ovulation. So what's this then? This is the fallopian tube. So the egg busts out of the follicle, busts out of the ovary, and for a short time it's going to be floating in this extracellular fluid. It's going to float around in there. What makes it get in the follicle? How does it know to get in there? I don't know if your reading describes this. So here's a fallopian tube. Let me go back. The fallopian tube, let me write this knot on the slant. See these things, these extensions? These are called fimbriae. And these fimbriae do this flapping motion. It's kind of like this. Kind of like this if you made a come here motion. They flap to create fluid currents that suck the egg in. They suck the egg into the tube. So the egg floats. It has a little space to go across. Those fimbriae have a flapping motion that suck the egg in. And then the egg basically gets flapped with fluid currents all the way through the fallopian tube and makes its way down to the uterus. There have been some weird cases in history where, like, a woman has this ovary is functional, but this tube is blocked, and somehow the egg made it over to this side and then came down through there. That's like on the order of a miracle, but it's supposed to head to the fallopian tube right next to it, and it gets flapped in, and that's how it goes across the gap. That's ovulation. Let me also say, anytime you have a question, just ask it. If you want to ask it after class, this is the first time I've recorded it, so that's like really not helpful. Maybe you don't want your question on camera, but ask it anytime during this unit. Okay, now we have the more familiar side-on view of female reproductive system. Here's the ovary, there's the fimbriae, there's a fallopian tube. This is what the inside of the fallopian tube looks like. So inside there are actually cilia that wave. So we've got fimbriae to flap to get the egg in to the fallopian tube. And then on the interior, all through the fallopian tubes of the uterine tubes, there are cilia that wave. They keep doing the waving motion, they're just a little bit smaller. So that propels the egg medially toward the uterus. There's the ovary again. We've got egg coming out this side this time. Let's label some of the other anatomy of the uterus itself. So on here, This is the uterine wall. This is a muscle. The uterus is a muscle. You don't know it until you give birth and it starts contracting. It's a muscle. The purpose of the contraction is to push the baby through the birth canal. But this layer right here in the lighter color, that is endometrium. Endometrium, that's the lining that gets shed every month during menstruation. And the muscular part is myo, for muscle, myometrium. Myometrium. And those are the two parts you need to know for this class. Down here, this region down here, this is cervix. Cervix. So cervix is either the exit from the uterus if you're a fetus, that's the exit. If you're a sperm, it's the entrance to the uterus. That's cervix, that region right here. What's this? Starts with V. Vagina. Yeah, vagina. Vagina there. And this picture also shows the ligaments again that are holding the uterus near the pubic bones. And you have also this ligament here that's holding the ovaries suspended in place. Okay, side view. Here's side view. So we're looking now at a cross section through the female reproductive tract and digestive tract and urinary tract also. This is one of the most important pictures that you'll have in lab and looking at lab models and so on. So let's label on here too. There's the ovary. There's the fallopian tube. Here's the uterus, cervix. Vagina, or this can also be called vaginal canal. Vaginal canal. What's this one? Bladder. Uterus above the bladder. What bone is this? Pubic bone. Yeah. Pubic bone. Okay. Now, the order of these structures is really important. This is one of the most important things in this lecture today. So, there are 3 openings in female external genitalia. Please don't leave this class without knowing what they're called and what the order is, whether you're male or female. The first one, this is the urethral opening. And there's the female urethra, which we talked about is short, here to here. This is the vaginal opening in the middle. Anus at the back. There's 3 different ones. I asked, I'll probably do this next time. I gave out index cards and said, do you have a question that you want to ask me or something that you want to say? And the card said, please teach everyone that females do not pee out of their vagina. I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. 3 separate openings. Okay, what's this one? That's not an opening, that's something else. I'll say it. This is clitoris. This is clitoris in the front. And we're going to see a picture of this, front on, which can be kind of jarring, but after you've had this class, most of you are going to be medical professionals or psychology professionals. So don't be afraid to say the right words, and teach your children the right words too. Like if you teach a little girl that this is called your puppy, and then they tell someone, he touched my puppy. Okay, that's fine. Teach them the right words. Even when it's annoying, when they go around saying it all the time, like my boys. Like, my penis. The other day in the car, it was like, what if I had a sword that it came out of my penis? So yeah, we're teaching them the words, the real words, and it's kind of annoying, but I don't know. I think we have too much shame around the words, and shame around our own anatomy. This goes like really well with today's convo talk, actually. Your body is your body. It's pretty miraculous. Oh, I don't have the next picture. You know the picture I'm talking about? Yeah, female external anatomy. I guess I don't have it in here, but that will be on your lab exam. Know where everything is. Okay. I have just the word menstruation. Let's connect the word menstruation back with this picture. Okay, so menstruation is, it sounds so boring, it's the monthly shedding of the endometrium. And the timing of that, like what's supposed to be the timing of that? What's supposed to be the real perfect timing of that? How often?
7 days?
7 days? It's not 7 days, thank God. 28. So it's supposed to be 28. So supposedly every 28 days. That's an average for sure. So some women have shorter cycles, some women have longer cycles. That's the average. And so the shedding of the lining is about every 28 days. And the start of that is considered day 1 of the menstrual cycle. So that's considered day 1 of your period is when you start shedding endometrium. The purpose of the endometrium is it's nutritious for a developing embryo. So you regenerate it every month if you're female, just in case. Just in case you have a fertilized embryo, you need that there to support it. If no embryo arrives there that month, it's shed, and then the process starts over. This part becomes important when we talk about pregnancy and conception, coming back to that. And I feel like you probably learn a lot about that in middle school. Now we go to male anatomy. There's a lot going on this figure. Males actually have more reproductive anatomy than females do, which is interesting. So, to start with male anatomy, I'm going to start where the sperm are made, in the testes. So, this is a testis. Testis. You see the thing about the dogs today, and you could get prosthetic testes for your dog, and they cost $1,000. Nudicles, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what that would be is putting in a fake, I don't know what they're made of, silicone probably, a fake structure that has the weight and the shape of a testis. So the testis is the inside part. What's covering it is scrotum. So scrotum is the covering. Scrotum is the covering. This part of the testis, right here, epididymis. I'm going to write that bigger because it's hard to spell. epididymis. This one is on top of, and this word means twin. That makes sense. On top of twins. Epididymis. One of the apostles was a twin, right? They use this word to describe him in the New Testament. Something like Didymus twin. Can't remember who it was now. Epididymis. So the testis makes sperm. The epididymis is a place where they mature. And then we come to this structure. I'm going to trace it on here. Down, up and around, around, until right there. That's called vas deferens. Vas deferens, or the other name for it is ductus deferens. That's the tube that sperm travel through. It's extraordinarily long. So it connects from the epididymis. It loops down and up inside the scrotum, down up. It passes over, it's interesting to me, it goes over the pelvic bone, not under. I would put it under. It seems more protective. It goes over the pelvic bone, and then it makes this long turn around the bladder, and it goes down behind the bladder, and then it comes around to the side. This is one of the, when you get in lab tomorrow and you have actual 3D models, trace this and look at how it goes, because it can be weird to look at this on a cross section like we do here and then relate it to the 3D. So trace it, it goes around behind the bladder and dumps sperm contents right here. I'll get back to that in a minute. Here's bladder. Here's the bladder. What are these things right here? Coming down to the bladder. Those are the ureters. Yeah. Those are the ureters. The ureters come into the top posterior of the bladder. Vas deferens are going between them, coming around the back. What's this thing? That's prostate. Talk about the function of the prostate in a minute. Okay, and so here, from here to here, that's male urethra. Male urethra. We talked about how the male urethra is so much longer than the female urethra. It's a much further distance for pathogens to swim up to the bladder and cause a UTI in men. It doesn't mean that men can't get UTIs. It's just more rare. Seem okay so far? I'm going to stay on this slide and write some more stuff on it about the glands. Okay. If I had to bet, like the parts of the male reproductive system that you don't know, it's these two glands right here. Nobody ever talks about them. But you have three. Okay, one of them is prostate. So you have these three glands. And these three glands are adding the liquid component of semen to ejaculate. So the sperm come out of the testis. They have a long way to travel before ejaculation, and before ejaculation they're actually joined by liquid components out of these three glands, which are really important. So here's the three glands that contribute secretions to semen. Okay, number one, I'll just label it like that. Number one, that's called seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle. It's named after semen. And you have two of it. So you have two of these, only one prostate. And that's more obvious when you get to the 3D models in lab. So number 1, seminal vesicle. Number 2 is prostate. And number 3, this has a particularly not imaginative name. Bulbo, because it looks like a squeezy bulb. A bulbourethral, because it connects to the urethra. Bulbourethral gland. Bulbourethral gland. So seminal vesicle, prostate, bulbourethral gland. I'm kind of going to combine what these make, I think. So here's what these make. They add liquidity, alkalinity, and sugars to the sperm, and then all of that together is semen. So semen is the liquid contributions plus the cells, which are sperm. And these glands together are adding liquid so that the sperm have something to swim effectively through. They're adding alkalinity, like base. They're adding basic pH chemicals for reasons we'll talk about later. And sugars, the sugars are for the sperm to have an energy supply. That's pretty neat. All of that together contributes to semen. So I don't know if I have a day to talk about infertility. We'll talk about it a little bit, but sometimes infertility is from one of these not working correctly and the semen not getting the correct factors that it needs aside from the sperm. So those are those 3 glands. So by the time that sperm passes through here, you have semen, and the semen will proceed on through the urethra. On through the urethra. It's men that pee out of their reproductive channel. So semen or urine could be coming through here. Let's see what picture I've got next. Same picture? This picture. This is the picture I want to have next, actually. I got a little bit ahead of myself. This is a cross-section through the testis. And it has all of these tubules in it called seminiferous tubules. And those are basically for sperm maturation. Sperm maturation needs cooler temperatures than body temperatures. So your body temperature is supposed to be 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6. Sperm maturation doesn't work well at that temperature. So that's supposed to be happening in these seminiferous tubules in the testis. This would be the epididymis up here. This would be the start of the vas deferens. But when sperm are first forming, they need to be at cooler temperatures than regular body temperature. You heard this before? Yes, no? Okay. This is the inside of one of those tubules. So you have these cells that divide, and they divide into the lumen, and then they start to become sperm there in the lumen. This picture is not as important for this process. So this thing with cooler temperatures, and go back to this. Remember, scrotum is the sac that suspends the testicles. That's scrotum. Your scrotum, if you're male, if you have one, can contract or retract to pull the testes. So if you've got 2, they're called testes. They can pull the testes higher, which makes them warmer. So this would tend to happen in cold cold testicles, cold temperatures, and cold testicles, the scrotum can retract and pull them up closer to the body so they stay warm. So that you don't, it's like Goldilocks. You don't want to be too hot, you don't want to be too cold. That's a process that can happen. One of the most famous Seinfeld episodes, George had been swimming and his new girlfriend saw him naked, and his scrotum was retracted because he was cold, and then he asked Jerry, do women know about shrinkage? And they were discussing that. And then they go and ask Elaine, who's the token female on there. She's like, it's shrinkage. And then George is just all upset because that has a physiological function. Just like the scrotum can contract, it can also, let's make this one in red because this would be when it's too hot. So the scrotum can also relax to lower the testes so that they become cooler. So this would be more in hot weather or hot temperatures or hot tub, or if you've heard that tighty-whities can make your sperm less good because it's too hot in there and boxers would be better, there is some truth to that. I mean, that's usually not a concern unless you are trying to conceive a child. If you've heard that hot tubs are bad for sperm quality, that's generally also true, but it's not a contraceptive method. So we'll come back to that later, but good sperm formation needs good temperatures, and that can be controlled by contracting, relaxing the scrotum. We'll leave it there for now, whatever level it's at. Okay, now, front-on picture of male reproductive anatomy. This one's kind of alarming. I mean, I guess the female one is alarming too, but it's separated from the rest of the body, so that makes it seem kind of strange. Two testes, they would be in one scrotum. So this is artificially splaying things out, let's say. Two epididymis, two vas deferens. This is looking at the back of the bladder. This is the back of the bladder right here. And one of the things that students mess up on the lab exam is, well, there's a tube and there's a tube. Which is which? And unfortunately, on the models that we have, the urethra is cut off. Like they don't have a big dangling piece of urethra to help you. Like there it goes up there. This is urethra. This is vas deferens. Be careful on that, on the models. That's the number one thing that students would mess up on the models when I've taught lab. Okay, here's seminal vesicle. You've got two of them. You have one prostate. There's your bulbo-urethral gland, one of it. There should be two. Here's the urethra. I'm getting down low on the screen. Let me see if I've got another picture. Yeah, this one's better, or worse, depending on how you feel looking at it. But so that's showing the parts of the reproductive system that are making sperm plus the fluid semen. So by the time we get to here, could have semen. Okay. Here's probably the most alarming picture of all. Showing layers within the penis. But there's certain parts of it I'm going to show. So this is called the glands, or the head of the penis. Glands, G-L-A-N-S. And the covering over it is prepuce or foreskin. Guys who have been circumcised have had the foreskin removed. Guys who have not still have it there. I think the lab models are not circumcised. Lab models are not. Now that I think about it. Let's see if I've got it. Yes, this is what I think. Okay. This to me looks like a monkey face. It's a cross section. It's a cross section through a penis. This would be like mid shaft. This is the urethra. This is the urethra right here. And you have 3 erectile chambers. These are the parts of the penis that can fill with blood and give erection. You have 3 of them. And then notice you also have blood vessels and nerves. What would this be? This would be anterior as well. The chambers are called corpus blank. One of them is corpus spongiosum. One of them is corpus, oh yeah, now I just remember, cavernosum. Corpus, which means body, spongiosum, and corpus cavernosum. Cavernosum are the one you have 2 of it. Spongiosum is the one the urethra runs through. That anatomy is the hardest part for me to remember, obviously. I think it's because they're not involved in reproduction as much as like doing the semen contributions and so on. Okay, now we come back to sperm. Finally. And I should do a similar thing for eggs on that next slide. So some notes about sperm. Label the parts. Okay, this is the head of the sperm. And out here at the tip there is a region called acrosome. So acrosome would be out here. This portion of the sperm contains the DNA. This contains the DNA, and this sperm would be haploid, which means it has 1 copy of each chromosome. It's got 23 chromosomes, because this is just a sperm. It has half the usual number. So every other cell in your body, if you're a man, every other cell in your body has 46 chromosomes except the sperm. They've got half the number. They're haploid. This acrosome region has enzymes that help penetration of the egg. So if this sperm eventually reaches an egg and they touch, the acrosome region bursts and there are enzymes that come out and help dissolve the outer layer of the egg. That's acrosome. This region of the sperm is the neck. That's the neck of the sperm. It is not particularly exciting. This region is the tail. And the tail aids in swimming. It doesn't, if this is a sperm, I need like a cord or something. Let's try this. Okay, if this is a sperm tail, it doesn't spin like this, it waves. So it does a wave motion to help swim. It aids in swimming. It uses lots of ATP. That's where it needs the sugars. So the sugars that come out of the reproductive glands in the male, they're to give energy to the sperm for swimming. Sperm have an enormously long journey to make. So if we go back and look how far they have to go. How far they have to go. This picture. Muscle contraction gets them out of the male. So it's not really like they have to swim out of the male. Muscle contractions will push ejaculate out of the male. But it's the female where they really have a long way to go. I guess this picture is best. So, like best case scenario, sperm would be ejaculated here. They have to swim up through the cervix, swim up through the uterus, and they actually fertilize eggs in the tubes. That was a thing I didn't know when I was young. Like, I assumed it would be down here. They go up into the tubes and they fertilize eggs as the eggs are coming through the tubes. Or the egg is coming through the tube. That's a long way, especially compared to how tiny sperm are. They're tiny, single celled. They have a long way to go. Hundreds of millions every day. We're going to get to that next time. Let's go back and write some things about eggs that relate to that. Where should we put that? Probably have more room here. Okay, things about eggs. Eggs are also called oocytes. I've also heard people say it oocyte. I can't hardly say that. Oocytes. I say oocytes, but I really just say eggs. But you should know this word as well. They're also haploid, which means that they have 23 chromosomes, one of each type. So that means if sperm and egg fuse, then you get 46, the diploid number. That's the usual number. So during egg and sperm formation, they have to have their chromosome numbers reduced. And we should write that down for sure right here. So during egg and sperm formation, meiosis. Oh my gosh, does that strike fear into your heart?
Meiosis.
If it strikes fear into your heart to be talking about reproductive stuff, it's meiosis, is it? Like, I don't know if I was absent that day, the first day it was ever introduced, but to me meiosis is one of the more difficult things in biology. Okay, so meiosis produces these haploid cells. And these can also be called germ cells. Sperm and eggs, they're not germs. Germ for like germinate or bring new life, germ cells. Meiosis has to happen in their development to make them haploid. The egg has no movement on its own. It has no movement on its own. And then the last pertinent fact that we'll write for today, if eggs work properly, it allows one sperm to fertilize it. That's incredibly important. if I'm an egg and I've got 23 chromosomes, I only need 23 more chromosomes. I don't need 46 more chromosomes or 230 more chromosomes, just 23. It's got to be one sperm and one sperm only. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
Yeah, just push that.